The fall didn't hurt as much as the silence that followed. I lay on the cold kitchen tiles, breath shallow, the kettle still whistling behind me. My hands trembled, not from pain but from the slow, creeping realization, no one was coming. I'd called his name out of habit, Michael. But of course, my son wasn't here. He hadn't been here for months. I don't know how long I was on the floor before I heard the knock. Then the voice, soft but firm. Mr. Amaze. Your porch light's been flickering. Everything all right in there? I couldn't answer. I must have groaned, or maybe the silence said enough. Because the door creaked open, he knew I kept it unlocked, and there he was. Nate, the young man from 2 doors down. Always quiet. Always polite. Mowed his lawn on Sundays. Brought his trash out precisely at 6 p.m. We'd nodded at each other for years, but never exchanged more than a wave. He crossed the room in 2 steps, shut off the stove, knelt beside me. Don't move. I've got you. His voice didn't rise. He didn't panic. Just called 911, cradled my head in his lap, and kept talking, telling me about his dog, the garden he was trying to grow, how he hated the smell of hospitals but didn't mind helping. The ambulance arrived 10 minutes later. Michael arrived 5 days after that. He came into the hospital room with a coffee in one hand and irritation in the other. Dad, you've got to stop being dramatic. You scared the hell out of us. Us? He meant Jessica, his wife. The one who never came around unless a tax document needed signing. I didn't mean to fall, I said, voice thin from dehydration and too many unsaid things. It just happened. He sighed, set the coffee down without looking at me. Well, we're looking into getting you some kind of home care. Something more permanent. Permanent. Like a facility. Like a storage unit for old people. I turned to the window. Nate found me. The neighbor. Michael blinked. Nate? He came in. Called the ambulance. Stayed with me. Oh, he said, already forgetting the name. Well, good. I suppose that's something. That night, while I lay under hospital sheets that smelled like bleach and endings, I replayed the last year in my mind. Michael's rare visits. The way he stopped asking how I was and started asking what I planned to do with the property. The mail he'd thrown out, my pension statements, old letters. How he started talking about my home like it was already his. And Nate, quiet, steady Nate, who brought me a sandwich the day I got home, left it on the porch with a note, ham and mustard. Let me know if you need help with the trash bins. I read the note twice. Then I looked at the family photo on the mantel, me, Michael, and Lily, taken 15 years ago. My wife had passed 2 weeks after that photo. Her absence turned into silence. That silence turned into Michael's distance. Then distance became debt. Something shifted inside me as I folded Nate's note and placed it gently in the drawer next to my will. It was just a sandwich. Just mustard. But it tasted like being remembered. The house had been too big for one person ever since Lily died. But I stayed. Not because of comfort, but because every creaking floorboard and sunlit corner held her voice. She picked the curtains in the kitchen because they reminded her of apricots. The deck out back, that was my retirement project, built plank by plank with arthritis in my fingers and her lemonade by my side. Michael was 13 when Lily passed. Grief turned him inward. He stopped playing piano. Stopped eating breakfast. Some mornings I'd find him sitting in her chair at the kitchen table, staring at nothing. So I stayed. I cooked. I folded his laundry, even when he went off to college. I paid tuition in full, sold Lily's jewelry, drained the vacation fund, took a night security job for the difference. He never knew. I never told him. That's what fathers do, right? His graduation photo still hangs in the hallway. Black cap, red sash. I remember crying so hard I couldn't hold the camera straight. Michael didn't look for me in the crowd afterward. He went to dinner with his friends. I caught a cab home. After college, he moved to the city. The first call came 2 months later. He needed help with rent. Then a car repair. Then Jessica lost her job and they needed a little support. I sent the money. Always with a, "Take care, son," attached. Sometimes he replied. Sometimes he didn't. The next 5 years were quiet. I mailed birthday cards with checks inside, signed, "Love, Dad." Christmas came with calls that sounded rushed, like I was a task to complete. Then one day, he showed up unannounced, with a realtor. He walked through my home pointing out dated features, discussing market trends like I wasn't there. "It's a prime lot, Dad," he said, tapping his phone. "You could get close to $900,000. That's more than enough for a good care facility, and Jess and I, well, we've been thinking about upgrading." "Upgrading?" I asked, though I already knew. "The condo's small. And you're not getting any younger, Dad." I looked at the photos on the wall behind him. Lily's apron still hung in the kitchen. Her handwriting still labeled the spice jars. Our life lived here, in these walls. "I'm not ready to leave," I said. He smiled like a man indulging a child. "I know. Just think about it." He left that evening, not even taking the leftovers I offered. The next morning, I noticed a pamphlet on the hallway table: Suncrest Senior Living, comfortable, safe, controlled. The word that struck me wasn't comfortable. It was controlled. That winter was hard. My joints ached in the cold. I slipped on ice twice but caught myself both times. No calls from Michael. But I heard from Nate. Once to ask if I needed help moving snow. Another time to borrow a shovel, which he returned polished and sharpened. When I thanked him, he shrugged. "You keep this street nice. Figured it's time someone helped you back." One spring morning, I saw him repairing a neighbor's fence. No charge. Just a quiet offer, tools in hand, dog at his feet. That's when I learned about his story. He'd grown up in foster care. A dozen houses by the time he was 16. Joined the army out of high school. Served 8 years. Now worked IT for a city contractor. No wife, no kids. Just him and his Labrador, Roscoe. "Not much family," he said, when I asked. "Same," I replied. From then on, it became routine. I'd bring over extra stew when I made too much. He'd fix my leaky faucet without being asked. We'd sit on the porch some evenings, drink tea, talk about nothing. Sometimes, nothing is all a person needs. Once, after Roscoe had surgery and I offered to help with vet bills, Nate looked like I'd slapped him. "You've done enough," he said. "You treat me better than anyone has in years." I didn't know what to say. So I just nodded. He left, but not before adding, "You remind me of what a dad's supposed to be." That night, I stood in the hallway staring at the old graduation photo. Michael's smile. The bright future I thought I was building. It wasn't regret I felt. It was grief, for a relationship that only ever existed in my imagination. That was the night I opened the drawer, took out my will, and placed it beside a new folder labeled simply, Nate. It happened on a Wednesday. A voicemail, of all things. I'd missed the call while tending to the garden. Nate had helped me plant tomatoes this year. Lily used to grow them. Said nothing tasted better than something you grew yourself. I still hear her voice every time I water them. The phone buzzed in my shirt pocket. Missed call, Michael. That alone was rare. I opened the message, pressed play. I expected the usual. Quick, detached. Maybe a mention of property taxes or health insurance. Instead, I heard his voice in mid-conversation. But if he falls again, it's on us, he said. And frankly, Jess, he's not safe alone. He's already nearly burned the place down once. The neighbors say they saw him leave the stove on. There was static. Then her voice. Then we need to push harder. We can't wait around for him to agree. Michael again. I know. I just need him to sign the transfer of ownership. Once the house is in my name, the sale is easy. And with the market now. The line clicked. Silence. That was it. They hadn't hung up. They'd pocket-dialed me mid-scheme. I stood still, the garden hose still running beside me, soaking my shoe. He hadn't called to check in. He hadn't meant to leave that message. That's what made it worse. It was real. I walked inside, turned off the phone, and set it on the counter next to Lily's recipe box. My hands trembled, not with shock, but with something colder. Final. It wasn't just about the house. It was the way he spoke, like I was a nuisance, a risk to be managed, an asset to be claimed. Like I was already gone. That evening, Nate came by with Roscoe, dropping off a jar of homemade pickles. His mother, he said, used to make them like this before she lost custody. I don't like them much, he said with a sheepish grin. But they're tradition, you know. I nodded, taking the jar. Some traditions are worth keeping. Others, not so much. He tilted his head. Everything all right? I almost told him. Almost handed him the phone and let him hear what blood sounds like when it turns cold. But I didn't. Instead, I said, you ever think some people outgrow their family? Nate shrugged. Sometimes, family outgrows you. He didn't mean it to hurt, but it did. Because that was the truth, wasn't it? Michael had outgrown me the moment he didn't need my money anymore. 2 days later, he showed up. I need you to sign something, Dad. He didn't sit. Didn't ask how I was. Just placed the papers on the table like a delivery man dropping off a package. What is it? I asked. Power of attorney. Just so we can help manage things. Taxes, insurance. You know. I looked at the signature line. And I lied. I'll think about it. He smiled, thin, impatient. You don't need to read the fine print. It's just a formality. That word again. Formality. I watched him leave without even glancing at the photo of his mother on the mantel. The one I'd dusted that morning, just in case he noticed. He didn't. That night, I sat in the kitchen, papers still untouched. I didn't need to read them. I knew what they said. I'd heard the plan already. The voice recording played over and over in my head, his tone so casual, so detached. He wanted my home, not my health. My legacy, not my presence. It was betrayal by subtraction. He didn't need to scream at me or slam doors. He just had to make me irrelevant, one signature at a time. Upstairs, the old will sat untouched in its drawer. Tomorrow, that would change. The papers sat on the kitchen table for 3 days. I didn't move them. Didn't throw them away. Just left them there, like they were part of the decor now, like dust or regret. I didn't eat much. A bowl of soup here, a slice of toast there. Nate came by twice, both times with Roscoe tugging at the leash and a warm smile in his eyes. He didn't ask questions. Just knocked, handed me a paper bag of groceries, and said, got extras from the farmer's market. Thought you might like some pears. I did like pears. But that wasn't the point. I thanked him and waited until he left to sit down with the fruit, slicing one carefully the way Lily used to. Paper thin. Arranged in a spiral on the plate. It made me think of Sunday mornings. Of her humming in the kitchen. Of Michael, 5 years old, standing on a stool next to her, helping stir the batter with a plastic spoon twice his size. He used to call it Mom's Magic Mix. Said her pancakes could cure anything. I couldn't remember the last time I'd seen him smile like that. Maybe at his wedding. Maybe not even then. I walked through the house slowly that evening, touching things I hadn't really noticed in years. The dent in the banister from the time Michael dropped his backpack down the stairs. The paint stain in the hallway from when Lily tried her lavender phase. The notch in the guest room door where Roscoe scratched when Nate stayed over during the blackout last winter. My world was full of ghosts, and none of them were angry. Just absent. I sat in the den after dark and stared at the fireplace. Lily had loved that room. She used to read there after dinner, legs curled under her, glasses slipping down her nose. I'd built her a shelf just for her paperbacks, everything from Agatha Christie to gardening guides. She never got to finish the last one. Bookmark still on page 72. I held it in my hands now, the paper brittle at the edges. Her handwriting was in the margins. Notes about sun placement and soil. Let them grow where they're wanted, she'd written once beside a section about stubborn plants. Let them grow where they're wanted. I looked around the room, and for the first time in my life, I felt like a stranger in the home I built. Not because of the walls, or the furniture, or the air. Because of what wasn't there. My son didn't love this place. He saw it as leverage. My son didn't love me. He tolerated me. And only when convenient. There was no shouting. No slammed doors. Just the hollow sound of a man realizing he'd been clinging to an idea that never existed. Not anymore. At some point I fell asleep in the chair. When I woke up, the sun was rising, bleeding orange light across the room like spilled jam. I rose stiffly, walked to the table, and looked at the documents. Power of attorney. Transfer of title. Durable consent for long-term care. Every page told the same story. You are no longer needed. I picked up a pen. Then I put it down. Instead, I opened the filing cabinet in my study and pulled out the manila envelope I'd labeled months ago but never opened. Inside, Nate's resume. A letter of recommendation I'd written but never mailed. And a note I'd scribbled one evening after we watched a baseball game together and he told me I reminded him of the father he never had. I sat down, took a fresh sheet of paper, and wrote something new. A name. A change. And a quiet goodbye to everything that came before. The next morning was quiet. Still. The kind of stillness you notice only after grief stops clawing at your ribs. I didn't make coffee. I didn't open the curtains. I just stood in the hallway with the folder in one hand and the weight of finality in the other. I'd made my decision. But it wasn't anger that guided it. It was peace. After breakfast, toast, dry, I got in the truck and drove to the attorney's office. The same one Lily and I had used for the will years ago. The receptionist recognized me, or at least pretended to. Mr. Amaze, welcome back. Are you here to review your estate documents? Yes, I said. And revise them. She raised an eyebrow. Would you like to schedule an appointment? No, I replied. I'd like to do it now. I was ushered into a conference room, same mahogany table, same brass lamp I remembered from the last time we sat here. Back then, Lily was still healthy. She'd brought lemon candies in her purse and offered one to the paralegal while signing the healthcare directive. People think of death too coldly, she'd said with a smile. But sometimes it's just another form of housekeeping. I remembered that as the attorney came in and sat across from me. Mr. Amaze, he said warmly. You're looking well. I'm not, I replied honestly. That's why I'm here. We reviewed everything. The deed. The financials. The will. I want it changed, I said, my voice steady. All of it. He nodded slowly. To whom would you like to leave your estate? Nathan Carter. The attorney looked up. Your son? No, I said. He's not related. But he's more of a son than the one I raised. I handed him the folder. Inside were documents, photos, handwritten notes, receipts for groceries Nate refused to be paid for. A letter, unsigned, that began, "To the man who treated me like a person, not an obligation." We spent the next hour redrafting the will. Home. Pension. Life insurance. All of it redirected. Carefully worded. Legally sound. No loopholes. No gray areas. And your son? The attorney asked near the end. Would you like him notified? No, I said. He'll notice on his own. When I left the office, the sun had warmed the concrete. I bought a newspaper on the walk home, not because I needed the news, but because it felt like something people do when they're no longer waiting for time to pass. I sat on the front porch and watched the world roll by. Nate walked up the street an hour later with Roscoe, earbuds in. He waved, as he always did. I motioned him over. How's it going, Mr. A? He asked, giving Roscoe a pat on the head as the dog nudged my knee. I looked at him for a long moment. He shifted a little, uncertain. Nate, I said quietly, do you remember last Christmas? He blinked. Sure. I brought you that thermos, right? The one with the stupid duck on it? I smiled. Yeah. You didn't have to. But you did. He shrugged. Just felt like someone should. I nodded. Well. I just wanted you to know something. He leaned in. You're in the will now, I said, voice even. The house, too. Everything. His mouth opened, closed again. Mr. Amaze, I didn't. I know you didn't. That's why it's you. He stared at me, eyes wide. But Michael is not the man I hoped he'd be. Nate sat on the porch step, trying to find words that didn't sound like gratitude or guilt. I don't want your house, he said eventually. I know. But I'll take care of it. I know that, too. We sat there for a long time, Roscoe asleep between us. The sky turned amber as the sun slipped toward the hills. It was the first time in years I felt like the future wasn't something to dread. Eventually, Nate rose. You sure about this? He asked softly. I looked at the home I'd built with my own hands, the life Lily and I poured into every beam and brick. I've never been surer. He didn't hug me. I didn't expect him to. But he paused before heading down the steps. For what it's worth, he said, my old man wouldn't have done this. Wouldn't have even noticed I existed. I looked him in the eye. That's his loss. And for the first time since Lily passed, I meant every word. The phone rang the following Friday at 9:42 a.m. Michael, as always, calling during a window between meetings, just enough time to issue instructions, not enough to actually talk. I let it ring twice before I picked up. Hey, Dad. No pause. No warmth. Just checking if you had a chance to look over the documents. I did. And? He was already tapping away on a keyboard, I could hear it in the background. I shredded them. The typing stopped. What? I shredded the papers, Michael. All of them. Silence. Then, why? I didn't like what they said. His voice changed, slipped into that professional tone he used with clients. Controlled. Patronizing. Dad, we talked about this. We agreed you needed help managing. I didn't agree, I said, calmly. You assumed. That's not the same. You're being unreasonable. No, I said. I'm being clear. Another silence. Then a short, bitter laugh. You talked to someone, didn't you? Is this about that neighbor kid? Nate, right? He's filling your head with ideas. No, Michael. He's just been filling my fridge. He didn't respond. I could imagine him sitting at his desk, jaw tight, hands clenched. I don't know what game you're playing, he said finally, but it's not going to end well for you. You need support. Real care. Not, whatever this is. You're right, I said. I do need care. I let the silence hold a beat. And I'm finally giving it to myself. I hung up before he could answer. The next call came 2 days later. Then another. I let them go to voicemail. No anger in his voice, yet. Just confusion. Like someone trying to open a door that no longer has a keyhole. It was working. And I wasn't done. I called my financial advisor the following week and canceled the joint emergency fund Michael had set up, just in case. Then I closed the co-signature he'd used for his second vehicle. Quietly. Efficiently. With no need for drama. The bank asked no questions. Just paperwork and a pen. The next day, I found an envelope on my porch. Michael's handwriting. No return address. Inside, a letter. Dad. I don't know what's gotten into you. This isn't like you. You've always been generous. Thoughtful. The kind of man who put family first. I don't understand why you're shutting us out. Please call me. Michael. I folded it slowly, set it beside the empty letter opener on my desk. He didn't understand. That was the problem. He thought I was changing. But really, I was just, returning. Returning to myself. To the man who once knew the difference between love and obligation. That week, Nate came by and helped me install new smoke detectors. Then he stayed for dinner, grilled chicken, green beans, and his mother's terrible pickles that I pretended to love. You ever think about moving? He asked between bites. Used to, I said. Thought maybe Florida. You hate humidity. I smiled. I hate Florida. We laughed. Then I said something I hadn't planned to. I rewrote the will. He looked up. Didn't speak. Just waited. You're the beneficiary. He didn't smile. Didn't object. Just nodded once, eyes steady. I'll honor it, he said softly. I know. 2 weeks passed. Then 3. Michael's calls stopped. No birthday card. No visit. Not even a text. The silence didn't hurt. It healed. Sometimes, the loudest revenge is not needing them anymore. 3 months. That's how long it took for Michael to realize the bridge had truly burned. Not collapsed. Burned, clean and intentional. I found out the same way I used to learn everything about his life, by accident. It started with a call from the bank. Not mine, his. A manager I'd spoken with years ago called to confirm I was no longer a guarantor on the joint loan. I told him yes, it had been terminated weeks ago. He sighed. Thought so. He's behind on payments. I didn't ask how many. I didn't ask why. I just said, thank you, and ended the call. 2 days later, I got a letter. From Michael this time. Not typed. Not neat. Scrawled like a man running out of time. Dad. We're in a bit of a bind. Jess's job is gone. The condo association is suing over back fees. And the car, well, you know how those things go. I just need a little help. Not forever. Just until we get things sorted. Call me. Please. M. There was no, how are you? No, I'm sorry. Just the weight of his panic wrapped in familiar expectations. For years, I would have answered. Picked up the phone. Moved money. Smiled through clenched teeth. Not this time. Instead, I slipped the letter into the same drawer as the last one and closed it gently. I didn't respond. A week later, a second letter arrived. Longer. Messier. He mentioned Lily in this one. She wouldn't want us to be like this. No. She wouldn't. But she also wouldn't want to see her son measure his father's worth by dollars and deeds. I read the letter once. Then I fed it to the fire. That same week, Nate stopped by with a pie, store-bought, oversweetened, thoughtful. Thought you might need something sweet, he said. It's the season, after all. We sat on the porch while Roscoe chased a squirrel with no hope of catching it. Nate sipped his tea, then glanced sideways. You okay? I nodded. Better than I've been in years. He leaned back. You know, my mom used to say something about people who only call when they need you. What's that? If someone treats your kindness like an ATM, don't be surprised when they get mad the day it stops dispensing. I laughed, sharp and sudden. She sounds like someone I'd have liked. He smiled. You'd have scared each other, probably. Another letter arrived. Then another. One of them included bank statements. Another, photos of the grandkids I hadn't seen in over a year. Bribes wrapped in guilt. I didn't reply. What could I say that wasn't already printed between the lines of my silence? Then came the email. Subject, urgent, estate question. It wasn't addressed to me. It was addressed to my attorney. Michael had contacted him directly, demanding clarification. He wanted to know if any changes had been made recently. He was concerned about mental competence. He was worried that I was being manipulated by a neighbor. My attorney forwarded it to me with one sentence. Would you like me to respond, or shall we let your silence speak again? I wrote back. Let it speak. That weekend, I saw them. Michael and Jessica. They didn't know I was home. They pulled up in front of the house, their car idling in the street. Michael got out first, walked halfway up the path, then stopped. Just stood there. Jessica didn't leave the car. I watched from behind the curtain, not hiding, just waiting. He looked older. Not tired. Not broken. Just lost. He walked back to the car and left a small package on the porch. Then they drove away. Inside was a framed photo. Me, Lily, and Michael, taken when he was 7. A note on the back read. I miss this version of us. I stared at the photo for a long time. Then I placed it in the hallway, next to all the others. Not out of forgiveness, but because I did miss that version too. But that version was gone. And the man who came looking for him was too late. The knock came just after dusk. 3 short raps. No doorbell. No text. I opened the door to find Michael standing there, hands in his pockets, eyes scanning everything except me. Can I come in? I didn't answer. Just stepped aside. He walked into the living room like it was unfamiliar territory. His eyes caught the framed photos on the mantel. One was new. Him at 7, Lily beside him, me behind. He pointed at it. I remember that day. So do I. He sat down slowly, like the couch might reject him. I'm not here to fight, he said. I don't understand. I sat across from him. What don't you understand? He rubbed his hands together. You changed your will. Yes. To Nate? Yes. He blinked, like hearing it out loud still hurt more than expected. He's not family. He is now. The words landed like gravel on tile, quiet but sharp. Michael's mouth opened, then closed. When he finally spoke, his voice cracked. Why? I leaned forward. Not to intimidate. Just to be clear. Because you stopped being my son the day you started treating me like a transaction. He flinched. You showed up only when you needed something. You talked about this house like it was already yours. You talked about me like I was an obstacle to be removed quietly. That's not fair. I heard you, Michael. The voicemail. The plan. The casual way you said, he's not safe anymore. You weren't concerned. You were calculating. He looked away. I've done everything for you, I continued. Paid for college. Covered your emergencies. Said yes more times than I should have. I never asked for. You expected it. That's worse. The room was silent for a long time. Then he asked, softly, do you hate me? No, I said. I mourn you. He looked up, startled. I mourned the son I thought I had. The man I raised. The boy who used to bring me dandelions because Mom said they were wishes in disguise. He covered his mouth with one hand, eyes red. I thought you'd always be there. I was. Until I realized you didn't see me as a person anymore. He stood abruptly, paced to the window, hands on his hips. I messed up, he said. I see that now. I'm glad. But, he gets everything. Yes. And I get nothing. No. You get something. He turned. You get the truth. He stared at me like I'd handed him a weight he didn't know how to carry. I don't know what to say, he whispered. Then don't say anything. Just hear me. I stood. Walked to the photo shelf. Picked up the one of Lily. She always said, don't give him so much that he forgets to say thank you. He nodded, slowly. I forgot. Yes, I said. But Nate didn't. He swallowed hard. Is this, final? Yes. He turned toward the door, stopped with one hand on the knob. Will I ever be welcome again? I looked at him for a long moment. If you ever show up just to sit on the porch and say nothing, without needing or wanting, maybe. He nodded. Opened the door. Closed it gently behind him. No slamming. No shouting. Just a man walking away with the sound of the truth echoing behind him. It's strange how quiet peace is. Not the silence of loneliness, but the calm that comes when you stop trying to hold together something already broken. After Michael left that evening, I didn't cry. I didn't pace. I didn't replay the conversation. I just made tea, sat on the porch, and watched the stars come out one by one. They looked the same as they had the night Lily passed. The difference was me. The next morning, Nate came by with Roscoe. I must have looked different, lighter, maybe, because he paused before stepping inside. You good? He asked. I think I am. He smiled. Told you those pears would work. We spent the day working on the garden. I showed him how Lily used to tie twine to help the tomato vines climb. He showed me how to patch a fence with modern tools I'd never bothered to learn. That night, we ate grilled cheese and watched an old western. Roscoe snored at our feet. When Nate left, he didn't say, thank you. He just said, see you tomorrow. And I knew he would. Over the next few weeks, life settled into something simple. I cleaned out the attic, not to get rid of things, but to choose what I'd take with me when the time came. Lily's letters. Michael's drawings from second grade. A box of cards Nate had dropped off over the past year, all unsigned except for a tiny smiley face in the corner. I found a rhythm. Morning walks. Porch tea. Letters I never sent. The quiet joy of not being needed, just remembered. Michael didn't call again. Not after that night. But I did receive one letter in early spring. I heard about the will. I've accepted it. I know I can't undo the years. I know I can't be who you wanted. But I hope, if you think of me at all, it's not always with pain. Tell Nate I'm glad someone got it right. I didn't write back. But I kept the letter. I placed it between the pages of Lily's gardening book, right next to her note, let them grow where they're wanted. On the first warm Sunday of April, Nate brought his niece by. Her name was Ellie. 6 years old, missing her 2 front teeth, with eyes the color of curiosity. She ran straight to the garden. Can I help? Of course, I said. But we do things properly here. She giggled. Nate handed her a trowel. She stabbed it into the soil with the serious expression of a child pretending not to love being praised. Later, we sat on the porch again. Ellie coloring on the step, Roscoe resting nearby. You know, Nate said, she asked if you were my dad. I looked at him. What did you say? I said, not by blood. But yeah. He kind of is. I looked out at the garden. Good answer. He chuckled. I'm trying. You're doing just fine. The wind rustled through the trees. The scent of fresh soil and lemon balm drifted from the yard. I leaned back. For the first time in a long time, there was no ache in my chest. No weight behind my eyes. Just the feeling of roots going deep, into soil that finally felt like mine again. I didn't get justice. I didn't get closure. I got something better. Peace. Not because I won, but because I stopped needing to. Somewhere out there, my son is telling himself a story about how his father gave everything away. Maybe he tells people I was manipulated. Maybe he says I was unwell. Maybe, on quiet nights, he whispers the truth to himself and lets it sting. That's his burden. Not mine. I've learned something in the stillness of these mornings. Something I wish I had known when I was younger. Blood doesn't make you family. Kindness does. Respect does. Showing up with pears when you don't have to. Replacing light bulbs without being asked. Saying, see you tomorrow, and meaning it. Those are the things that build a home. Not deeds. Not inheritance. Not shared names. But small, ordinary moments wrapped in care. I didn't lose a son. I simply made room for one I hadn't seen coming. And as I sit here, old bones, warm tea, porch creaking beneath a familiar breeze, I finally understand what Lily meant when she said, let them grow where they're wanted. Some plants thrive in shade. Some bloom in silence. And some sons are grown, not born.